be denied defense.
Gentleman, Robert Avery. I live on Hillside Street. I see that you've dealt with the matter of indemnification, Mr. Suarez, this evening, and the matter would therefore seem to be at an end. May I now have the records, Mr. Gobo?
Absolutely. As soon as the mayor and council make a resolution that the minutes are no longer confidential, absolutely.
And how can we get that done?
Can we do it right now?
Oh.
I don't see why not.
What is it you want, Mr.?
I have submitted an OPA request for all records in connection with Mr. Suarez's request to be indemnified in his lawsuit against Michael Mecca. Those records have never arrived at my office. They've never been provided to me. I could go to the Government Records Council, or I could, as I'm doing now, repeat my request here time and time again. Mr. Gobo just indicated that there could be a resolution by which this council could determine that the minutes and the other documents are no longer confidential and that they may be released. It seems to me, now that the matter has been voted on and that indemnification has been denied, there is no further need for confidentiality, and that the records must, therefore, under statute, be released. I request, once again, that they be released. May we do that?
Isn't this still back in the courts? I mean,
Well, what I understand is Mr. Avery is asking for documents regarding the mayor's request for indemnification. Mr. Gobo, I think, correctly denied those documents because they were part of an internal discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Could I just make one correction to that statement, Mr. Gobo? Mr. Gobo did not deny those records. I indicated in a letter to Mr. Avery that they would certainly be made available to him at such time as the mayor and council determined that the confidentiality no longer existed.
Well, my point is that
I will confirm that's what Mr. Gobo said.
But the point is, you didn't turn them over because they were subject to an appropriate privilege.
Absolutely.
Okay, sorry. When I say you denied them, I think you did the right thing because it was subject to a privilege. The question now is it any longer subject to a privilege? And the answer to that, as I stand here tonight, is my sense is no. My sense is that it's not because the governing body voted tonight in a resolution by Councilman Todd that the request for indemnification should be denied. So I don't know what's left. If the governing body wants to authorize me to research that and advise you that subject to that research, I can release that. I would recommend you authorize me to investigate it and be sure that we would be prudent in releasing it. So what I would recommend you do is you enter a resolution, you adopt a resolution tonight, authorizing me to release the documents, or documents I may release, subject to my confirmation that there is no longer a privilege. Because we wouldn't want to release anything that would otherwise expose anybody here to releasing privileged documents.
Yeah, that's why we want to check with you. So, what is the process? You're going to make a...
I think you can make a resolution saying that...
Okay, I make a resolution that the executive session minutes or discussions be released to the public.
that's not what he said. He says make a motion for it to look into it first.
You have to look into it? Is this a case or is this a special case?
Well, there's another issue here. I heard Mr. Avery, I do not have his request in front of me, saying he made a specific request for documents. I didn't hear anything about minutes because what I can tell you is...
Well, thank you, Mr. Doyle. I appreciate your adding that in for me, and I certainly would amend my request to include that.
Well, you can do that, but I can tell you that the governing body has not had yet presented to it, unless I'm mistaken, Marty. And I'm not suggesting that they should be ready yet, because we just had a meeting tonight. We have yet to have the minutes regarding this issue presented to us, which would have to be approved by the governing body, and then they would be released. So I can tell you that those minutes will not be probably ready for at least a meeting or two, because now they're going to be compiled. You asked for something else, but
For
you
the
asked for
documents as
documents. Okay, so, and I want to keep the request separate so that nobody can accuse Mr. Gilbo of not complying with the Open Public Records Act, which require him to respond and or produce the documents within 7 days. Did your original request ask for minutes too of the closed session?
I believe it asks for any and all documents and records in connection with.
Okay. Eventually, we will have minutes which will fall into that category.
I'm not going to argue about that. How about the documents?
Okay.
Can I get those?
The answer is, I would recommend that the governing body authorize me to counsel Mr. Gilbo that he can release those, subject to me researching that there is no other privilege and there's nothing that allows us to deny them, because the thrust of Oprah and Mr. Gilbo, who is responsible for complying with them, not lawyers, and in fact, the court cases have held that I can't get in the way of him complying with them. I'm willing to counsel him on what he thinks he can do and what I think he should do. It's going to be his call at the end, but I'm willing to research whether, in fact, there's anything else that would prevent him from being under an affirmative duty to provide that. Do you agree with that, Marty? Yes. Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Well, what is the motion?
To release them, subject to my research, that there's no reason why we can no longer produce them.
How long will this take? Do you have any idea?
2-3 days.
Okay.
Jonathan and I will get on it in the morning, because putting aside whatever, he has a pending request for which Mr. Gilbo may have exposure. If we resolve this, we don't get him certain documents.
So I second the motion.
Yes, of course, we don't know. In other words, it comes down to a time, right? It would be,
There's a motion and a second.
Yes.
Roll call.
Councilman Zera?
Yes.
Councilman Todd?
Yes.
Councilman Vincent?
yes.
Councilman Severino?
Yes.
And Councilman Costello.
I'm just curious, first, you said 2-3 meetings, just a little.
2-3 days.
No,
2-3
before
days.
that.
Oh,
The minutes.
the minutes. Mr. Gilbo now has to go back and review the number of meetings that we had, whatever meetings those were, whether it's 1, 2, he's got to then put the minutes together for the closed session. Then he'll present the closed session minutes to the governing body for approval. Once they're approved, and assuming there's no longer a privilege, they will be then released to the public.
We've done that before with a personnel.
That's right.
And you don't think there's no conflict because it's still in the courts again?
Not, well, I don't believe there is, because this is just about whether the governing body should grant or deny indemnification. I'm not taking any position with respect to this particular court.
Right.
This is just about indemnification. And I'm going to look at Mr. Avery's request, and if Mr. Avery's request is limited to documents regarding the request for indemnification, and assuming there's no other legal reason to protect those documents, I'm going to counsel Mr. Gilbo that I know of no legal reason to not produce them. If I know of a legal reason, I'm going to tell him they won't get produced, and we'll walk down that road. But I will be in touch with Marty about it.
Yes.
In lieu of the minutes, then I would be happy to receive the verbatim recordings of those portions of the meetings in which this was discussed. Minutes could then come later. I would be just as happy with that. Mr. Doyle, you can consider that. Gentlemen, thank you for your vote. Thanks.
Thanks.